Good morning. We're learning as Chuspafu Shlema Filan Chai Basarach. We're on the Mishnah on the top of Tes Zayin Amud Aleph. Look the Mishnah. Pigo. This blot for me it seems like very familiar. It was very familiar concepts, but I know it gets a lot of different applications, so it's not be'etzem hard. Pigo b'kaimitz v'loy b'levayna v'loy b'kaimitz. A a standard mincha has a kaimitz that you have to burn, and it also has levina that you have to burn. You have to do both of them in order to be mater the shirayim ba'achila, to be allowed to eat the rest of the mincha. So what happened if he had a machshavas pigel when he was being makter the kaimitz, but not when he was being makter the levina, or vice versa? He had by the levina, not by the kaimitz. Or may I am a pigel v'chayim of karas. Rameya says, even though it was only half of what was needed to be mater, the shirayim b'achila, it's still going to be, his machshavas pigul was only in half of it, it's still going to be considered pigul. Chum disagree, say no, you have to have the entire mater, you have to have both the kaimitz and the levina, which are both, the burning of both of them is what's mater, the shirayim b'achila. You have to have a machshavas pigul on both of them in order to be chayiv pigel. Umaydim chacham l'remeir b'minchas chayta u'minchas kanayis. The chacham amaydir remeir by minchas chayta and minchas kanayis. Both of these minchas don't have any levina. Shem pigel b'kaimet shu pigel v'chayven of karas. They'll agree on that case that you're going to be chayiv karas for pigel without having machshav about the levina because there is no levina. Shakaimet hu hamater, because the kaimet is what's mater the shirai. Another example of this, shachat echad min hakvasim. We've talked about the kivsei atzeres. There are two lambs that were brought on Shavuos that were mater the shtei halecha. So if he had a machshavas pigel in one of those two kivsei atzeres, and he has a mind to eat the two chalos chutz l'zmanai, lecha beis chalos l'machar, hekter echad min hamazicha. In another example, he was makta one of the two beziche levina that were on top of the lechem mishnah on the shulchan, which the haktara of those two bezichin is what's mater the lechem mishnah v'achila, but he only had a machshav on one of them. So hekter echad bezichin lechel beis darim lemachar Meir pigel v'chayil of karas. Meir says it's pigel and yechayil of karas because Meir says that you're mafagel b'chatzi mater. You don't have to have the entire mater in order for it to be pigel. Because Chum say you have to have you only have karas when he makes pigel on the entire mater. And since in both of these cases it was only half of the mater, it's not going to be pigel. Shachat echad min hakvasim. What happens if he shechted one of the kvasim? Lechel mimenu l'machar, to eat from that keves the next day. So who pigel v'chaveri kasher? Even though we said that the two kvasim are only a chatzi mater on the shtei halechem, over here we're talking about his machshava wasn't about the shtei halechem, but his machshava was about eating the keves itself. So each keves, the shchita of the keves, is what's mater the dam fizrika. We know a shchita is, you can have a shchita, you can have a machshavas pigel in a shchita, and he was having a machshava about the achila of that keves, and that becomes fully mutter with the four avodas. So who pigel v'chaveri kasher? So that entire keves will be pigel, and the other keves will be mutter. He didn't have any machshava while he was shechting that about eating that other keves. But if he has a machshava while he shechs one of the kvasim to eat the other keves the next day, that's not having a machshava on the thing that you're doing, and therefore it's going to be kosher altogether. It's not even going to be possible. Amarav, machlokes shenosan is a kaimitz v'shtika v'salavayna b'machshava. Rav says this is machlokes for Meir and the Chum that we brought three different examples of in the Mishnah. That Rav Meir says yemafagel b'chatzi mater, that you have to, even if you're only have a machshava in part of the avodah that's going to be mater this thing. I mean, for example, the kaimitz and the levina. Even if he has a machshava just on the kaimitz, on the aktaras kaimitz it's still going to be pigel. He says, Rav says that's only where he did a machshava. He had a machshava. For example, he first did the kmitza, and he didn't have a machshava pigel, and then he did the levayda with a machshava pigel. So the machshava on the levayda will only be a chatzi mater, and the chum will say it's not going to be pigel. Aval nasan akamitz machshava is a levayda b'shtika. But if it was the other way around, the first thing he did, he had a machshava, and then he did the other one without. He did it stam. Divya called pigel. Everyone will agree that it's pigel. Even the chacham who say ein mefagel b'chatzi mater, they'll agree if you did the chatzi mater first with a machshavas pigel, and then you did the other part stam, we'll assume his machshavas pigel is also he means to apply it to the second machshava as the second ma'isa as well. Shmuel Amar Adayin hi machlekes. Shmuel says no. The Chacham would argue even when he first had a machshavas pigel and then followed up with a machshavas tam. Yosef Rava Kamal Lo Hashmaitza. Rava said over this member of Rav that he said we would say Al Kol Ois Al Das Rishonu Oisa, and if you did the machshava of pigel first, it would be pigel even according to the Chacham. Eisvei Rav Achabar Rav Huna LaRava b'medva mamur b'kmitza u'b'matan kliya b'chilach. That which we say, Rashi said, Menon, that we're talking about the rule that matana achas is pigel b'dam imanitten. That means b'dam manitten b'chutz. If you only have to have a machshava on one of the nesinas dam on the mizbeach, but these chacham disagree and they say, that is only by kmitza ma'ankli and hilach. By those parts of the avodah. The first two avodas. Aval bala lahaktara nasan hakam v'shtika v'salavayna machshava v'sakam machshava v'salavayna v'shtika pigel v'chayv and olav kares. Chomer ein b'kares ha'shifaga b'chol ha'matim. That which we said that when you do one of the avodas, you're going to be chayiv, because on the first parts there is no levina. There's no levina when you do kmitza. There's no parallel kmitza of the levina and the matan kli and the hilach. We're going to see later on. Hilach is a little bit controversial, and the matan kli is a little controversial. We'll get to that later. But in any case, there's no levina legabi those. At least that's what the mashma is of this. I think, what is this, a brisa? I think this is a brisa, yeah. Aval baloil haktara, when it comes to the haktara, and the haktara you also have levina, then it's going to make a difference. If you know someone that's going to was a levina machshavas, a kamis machshavas a levina b'shtika, remeya or mepigel v'chayim of karas, v'chayim and by karas ha'shifaga b'chol ha'mater. We're saying that whichever one comes first, it doesn't make a difference. A Chacham is still going to argue and say there's no kares, even if you had the machshavas pigel first before and you did the levina b'stam. Katani mir nasan is a kind of machshavas a levina b'shtika upliga. The Chacham ma achaylik even that. So chayrit shver on Rav. Ein makvar nasan is a levina b'shtika meikara. Say that it's talking about where he did the levina b'shtika. When it says he did the levina b'shtika, he did the kaimitz b'machshava and the levina b'shtika, it means that he had already done the levina b'shtika first. That's why the chamachaylik. Shtei tzuvis v'glav. Gemara says that's not viable for two reasons. Chad dahainu kamaisa. First of all, if you say it's talking about where he did the levina b'shtika and then he did the haktara, the kaimitz b'machshava, that's the same as the first example. Kaimitz b'shtika is the levina b'machshava. So if you're talking about, so you're saying as a kaimitz machshavas a levina b'shtika, so he did the kaimitz a levina of the levina b'shtika first. It's general. It's the same din whether it was whichever one was first. It's talking about we did shtika followed by levina by machshava. So it doesn't. Why would the brisa say redundant in va'id hatanya achakach? We also have a brisa with this same memra, and it includes the word achakach. He did the Kmitza B'Shtika, and afterwards he did the Levina. I'm sorry, we did the he did the Kmitza B'Machshava, and afterwards he did the Levina B'Shtika, and the Chama Chalik on that also. Rav Chanina answered, so you have to understand the Brisa according to Rav, the Beis Deis. We're talking about, it was two different Kehanim. The whole thing that we say, that Rav had said, that we say, he's doing it al das rishayna, whatever he does first, that's his das. So if he did it b'machshava, the second, and he did the second one stam, the second one is going to follow the first. That's only if it's the same person. That we assume is whatever he had in mind by the first one, he also had in mind the second one. Over here, we're talking about there were two different kaihanim who did the machshava of the kaimetz and the one who did the aktara of the kaimetz and the aktara of the levina, and therefore doesn't carry over from one to the other. That's another kasha on Rav. Toshma. Where do we say that a machshava on any one of the nesinas dam is going to be a machshava? That's a mizbeach achitzin on the first of the, because over there we say that you only need really one nesinas dam. The only one that's ma'akav is the first one. Avodama now mizbeach apnimi, but the other karbanas, the param hanisrafim, that as we know, there's first if it's by the param hanisrafim b'Yom Kippur, you first have zrikas in the kodesh kadashim toward the aron, and then you go out and you do toward the paroiches in the heichel, you do toward the paroiches, and then you do on top of the Mizbeach HaPnimi, and then you do on the sides of the Mizbeach HaPnimi, on the kronos, and then on the sides, on top. So those hazayis, you need to do all of them. They're all ma'akav. Kagoin mem migil gimel sheyam kippur, like the 43 of Yom Kippur. V'achas asher shel par koyim Mashiach, v'achas asher shel par halom davar shel tzibur. The 11 that you do for the Parka Mashiach, Parka Davar Shel Tzibur, Pigel, Bein B'Rishayna, Bein B'Shniyah, Bein B'Shlishis, whether you did Pigel on the first, second, or third group of Hazais, like as we're going to see later on, there's really 4 groups of Hazais. The first group is the Hazais, we do Sheva Lamata and Achas Lamayla on the Aron in the Kodesh Kadashim, and that you do separately with the Dam of the Par and the Dam of the Sar. And then you come outside and you do 8 also toward the paroiches of both kinds, of both the par and the sar. So that's 16 inside and 16 outside. So you have 32. Plus you add on to that then you mix together the dam of the sar and the par, and then you do on top of the Mizbeach, and you do 1 toward the top and 7 toward the bottom, and then you do another 4 on the kronos. That's an additional 11. That gets you to 43. So you have 4 different groups of hazais. The 2, one in the Kodesh Kadashim, 1 toward the Paroiches, and 2 on the 2 separate groups toward the Mizbeach HaPnimi. So Remeya says, even if you did just one of these groups, and you have to do the entire group because each group is considered like its own full zurika, and if you miss any one of them, it's not going to be good. So you have to do the entire one. But Remeya says, as long as you did any one of these, any one, bein b'rishayna, bein b'shniyah, bein b'shlishis, any one of these groups, you chayev kares. Chacham say no. There's shita that you have to be mafag b'chol amater. Katani mia pigol bein b'rishayna, bein b'shniyah, bein b'shlishis. Du pligi says that even if he had the machshavas pigol on the first one and then he did the rest of them stam, the Chacham is still going to say it's not a machshavas pigol. The chitema hachanami b'shtei deyis. And you'll say this is also talking about words different kaihanim, but this is all the kain gadol. So how could you have with different kaihanim? Hanichol mandama b'par. This is good according to the Mandamar, which is a machlokes in Yuma. that if the Kohen Gadol dies or becomes apostle in middle, and you bring another Kohen Gadol in to continue the Avodah, can he use the dam? Can he use what was done by the previous Kohen Gadol? Does he have to start from the beginning? So according to the Mandam, who says he could use the dam that was used by the first Kohen Gadol, so that's, you can have different Kohanim. You have four. Each Kohen Gadol did one part, and then the next another one did the second part. So that's the case where the Chacham would say that we don't say that al das rishaynu oisa, because it was different Kohen Gadol. Elamandam par v'loy b'damish al par. According to Mandam that says we dash from a par v'loy b'damish al par, that each Kohen Gadol has to bring his own dam. So then there would be no way to say that each one should passel the other one. It's a whole new dam. Michael and Bema. Amarava hachamaiskin koche pigel b'rishaynu v'shasuk b'shniya upigel b'shlishis upigel b'shlishis. V'shasuk b'shniya upigel b'shlishis. He had a machshavas pigel on the first one, then he was shasuk on the second one, then he had a machshavas pigel on the third order, the third group of zrikas. The amrin. And that will say, Isaac, and that the Chacham will say, you don't say al das rishaynu. Isaac that kalois al das rishaynu oisa, we had to be good b'shishus lamali. Why would he go ahead and say again on the third one that now I'm having a das machshava, a machshavas pigel? He already was conveyed by the first one. So once he was shaisik, you can't say that the shtika was meant to be a continuation, because it was meant to be a continuation. He never would have said anything by the third one. Matzkev Rashi. Rashi asks on this. Midi shasak tani. Does it say he was shaisik at all? He just said he had a das on the first one, or the second one, or the third one, and now you're saying that it means that he was shasik on the second one and had a machshavas pigel on the third one. There was no mention of this in the brisa. Elam Ravashi hachmaiskinan going to pigel b'rishaynu b'shniya. So what is it? The sheet to change it? He takes out b'shlishis. Shekal pagel b'rishaynu b'shniya, and then he was shasik on the third one. We didn't say anything by the third one. Because if it's the middle one, you have to say he was shasik to contrast with the first and the third. But if you just had a machshav on the first two, you could say that that's what it means. He was pigel b'rishaynu u'b'shniya. In the third one, he didn't say anything. Lamali. If it was Aldas Rishayna, that we want to say that the third one is also going to have the same din as the first two, why did he have to go back and say Machshavas Pigel on the second one? If it was Aldas Rishayna, he could have just had him just said, I'm doing this Aldas with Machshavas Pigel on the first one, and then it will continue on through the rest of them. The fact that he felt he had to say it by the Shnia, that means that the third one was not intended to be a continuation. Amid Beis. The Gemara says, but still, even this, how could you say that's what it means? It said, Bein b'rishayna, bein b'shniya, bein b'shlisha. Now you're saying it means not, he did in the first one and the second one. Bein b'rishayna, bein b'shniya does not sound like both the first one and the second one. It's like the Gemara, kasha. It's taka, a kasha. Amar ma. So we brought this last brisa as a raya against Rav, that when someone has that the Chachamim and Rameya argue, when someone has a machshava in any one of the three parts of the Param HaNisrafim, either the Par V'Sor of Yom Kippur, Par Koy Mashiach, Par Hamdav Shel Tzibur, that you have Hazoyis in the Kachei Kachim, you have Hazoyis in the Heichel toward the Pareichas, and then you have Hazoyis, two sets of Hazoyis on the Mizbeach, and we said, if he had a machshava on any one of those groups, Rameya will say it's going to be a machshavas pigel, and the Chum will say until he has on all of them, it's not going to be a pigel, because Rameya holds that mefagim b'chatzi mater, and the Chum holder has to be the whole thing. Amamar Rameya I'm a pigel b'chayv of kars michti kars on mechayv asher yikravu kol hamatirin. The din is that you're not going to be chayav karas for machshavas pigel until the entire carbon was done properly. He's makar of everything that's matter. Damamar, Yerotza, the pasuk says Yerotza, Kartzos Kasha Kachatzos Pasal. Just like you have to do everything in order to get Artzah, if in a kosher carbon, you have to do the same thing by a pigel carbon, that you have to do the rest of the carbon properly. Martos kosher achikuvu kolamatir. Now martos pasal achikuvu kolamatirin. Just by a hakravas hakravas pigel, you also have to be mark of the whole thing. The high keeping the kosher b'fnim pasle. This, let's say he did a machshava in the kachei kachim. He did have a machshavas pigel. L'chayre that passled the rest of the dam. The rest of the dam is not kosher dam. Ki madei behechel ma'ye ba'amud kamadei. How could you say he was mat hikaru kol matirav according to Reb Meir? But the dam is treated like water. It's already a part of a puzzle of carbon. The dam itself became puzzle because you had a machshavas pigel in the first part, and it's gonna puzzle the rest of the carbon. Amarava mishkachas laba'abor pa'im va'abor sirim. The way you can find it is if he did the hazoyis in the kachei kachim, and he had a machshavas pigel, and then he went ahead and he lost that amor, it spilled out, and then he brought another carbon. He shechted another carbon, which he's not really supposed to do because this is already a puzzle of carbon. But he went ahead and he brought another carbon. So now, or like he didn't ask, and now it's a new dam, and this dam was not affected by the original zrika. It wasn't puzzled by the original zrika with the machshavas pigel. Rava says you don't have to resort to that, where it was 4 separate seirim and 4 separate seirim. Leflugi meratza, lefguli meratzi. It doesn't. Since the whole psul here was because it was pigel, and we're going according to the Manda Amar who says mefaglim b'chatzi mater. That din that we say that you have to actually you could call a matirin is not going to apply to make this dam just turn into maya and treat it as dam as if it was water, because the whole psul in it is pigel, and he has to. So that's part of what the pigel answered. So it's not going to be treated as if it was not a kosher carbon. This is all an outgrowth of the original pigel. Okay, we're gonna have to. How can we say it says there were 43 hazoyis b'fnim? We said you need. It says in the Brisa that were 47. It's talking about there were 4 hazoyis on the chronos in the Heichel, and according to one man the Amar, those were done with the mixed up dam of the soyer of Yom Kippur together with the par of Yom Kippur. The other man the Amar, they weren't mar of it, so it was 4 separate for each one, 4 with the soyer and 4 with the par. So that's how you got, instead of 43, it was 4 more, 47. What about the mandam who says it was 48? It depends if you say Shirayim Ma'akiv, so then he's counting Shirayim as the 48th. And the mandam says Shirayim Le'ma'akiv, it's only 47. Let's try to see if I have to go in a couple of minutes, but let's try to finish this next sugya. Ibailu pigel b'halacha mahu. If he has a machshavas pigel on the halacha of the kaimitz, is that going to be considered? Since when you bring you have to bring the kaimitz to the mizbeach to be burnt, and you also have to bring the levina to the mizbeach to be burnt. So we said the first 3 avodas. Since there's no levina on it, then there's no din that it's only a chatzi mater. But what about the halacha? Maybe that's considered to be something that applies to levina as well. Therefore, it's a chatzi mater. Going to the chacham, it shouldn't be mafagel. Rabbi Yochanan halacha k'kmitza. Rabbi Yochanan says halacha is like the kmitza, just like there's only a kmitza. There's no kmitza for levina, so it's not a chatzi mater. And he says halacha is the same thing. Rish Lakish on halacha k'aktara. No, Rish Lakish says like the aktara, which Recham would say it's a chatzi mater. Bishlam Rish Lakish ikanami halacha de levina. According to Rish Lakish, it makes sense that it's like Daktara because you do have to bring the Levina to the Mizbeach to be burned. So it should be a Chatzimat. Rabbi Yochanan, my time. What's the reason for Rabbi Yochanan? Amarav, Kasav Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Avodah She'enim Materes, Avodah Chashuva Hilafagel. He says, since this halacha is not necessary, if you have like a bunch of Kehanim standing next to each other and they just pass it along and no one walks with it, it would still be good. It's just that it's you have to get it to the Mizbeach, but there's no necessity that it be done. If it would be right next to the Mizbeach, it would be good. So therefore, it's considered avoida on its own. It's not considered a chatzimata. Amalei Abaya hareshchita echad min hakvasim da avoida she'enev materta upligi. We brought on Amid Aleph that the chachamim achayla, and they say even if you have the two kvasim, each keves is only matter itself. It's not matter the other ones. It's not matter the other one, and nevertheless, and even so, the chachamim achaylik over there. The Tnan shachar echem rakvasim lechol shtei chales lemacha. If he shechted one of the kvasim, having in mind to eat the shtei chales the next day, hikta echem bezichen lechol shnei starim lemacha, or by the lechem upon him he had in mind by one of the bezichen. Remeir mepeg v'chayin of kars v'cham me'im by kars hashifag b'cholat mater kula. So why would the chachamim say that anything that's not necessary to do shouldn't be, since this is not necessary to be matir the other one, it should also have the same din like the halacha. This is not being matir. Yeah. So tomorrow, Amalei misavis lechem b'taner kaddish. You're saying that it's not the mater. The lechem. It's true that it's not the mater for the lechem, but it's mekadesh the lechem. Shchita kvasa mekadesh. The shchita is what's mekadesh it. Vavol lekadesh kabbalah hata dami. Since it's coming to be mekadesh the lechem, it is also coming to be mater because you could even you could bake the bread after the kvasim. There doesn't have to be designated a kavis, so that's why it's not a mater, but it is mekadesh. Maser of Sima Barashi Achem Raimim Hiktem Mulam La'arelim Kosher Hiktem Arelim Lamulam Pasal. This is talking about when you shech the korban Pesach, you have to have one mandama. We say in a Mishnah that the din is you have to have in mind for ksherim, for people who are already mal. Someone who's an oral is not kosher to do the Pesach, and if you only have in mind people who are arelim, it's certainly not a good shechita. But the Mishnah says if you have a mixture, it's good. And then there's a brisa that we bring, which is chaylik, and says hiktem mulam la'arelim kosher. If you do the mulam first, then it's going to be kosher because you had first in mind for people who are kosher. And we explain over there that the machlokes is not really which one came first, but it's a machlokes of Remeir and the Chachamim, according to the Amar, that says that hiktem mulam la'arelim, it's going to be kosher because they hold chatzi mater like Remeir is kosher. So, and over here it's not it's not a mater. It's not being mater or anything. It's like this is the shchita, which is not yet mater. Amalei misavas dam betzava behem kaddish dam sakem makasha. Says with the shchita is going to be mekadesh dam. V'habal kaddish kabbalah hatadam. Again, we're going to say the same thing. That it's since it's mekadesh, that's going to be possible. Toshma bekvitzim mat and kli behilach. We said before bekvitzim mat and kli hilach. We mentioned hilach. Ma'alav hilach daktara doesn't mean we're using meilachet to be matter. Lo hilach the mat and kli. It's talking about the hilach to put the kaimitz in the kli. Yihachi mat and kli behilach or behilach mat and kli mibai. It should have said first the hilach if it's talking about putting it into the kli, putting the kmitz into the kli. So about holy kasha tani hachi. You could change it. Bala laktara bala ilacha mi baile. For about Frektamar, it should have said bala laktara bala ilacha. Why don't we mention ilacha if it's also part of the matin? Halikashik, even though ilacha tzarich aktari karle aktar. Elanasan is it's since we call it all part of the aktar. Elanasan is a kaimitz bestika hailach mi baile. It should have included hailach kasha. That's taka a good kasha. I'm gonna have to stop over here. I'm sorry. Have a good day. I got to run out.
Thank you so much.